So the Gilbert house here behind me was built in 1856. It is a limestone structure. It was the home of Dr. Samuel and Julia Gilbert. And Dr. Gilbert was a physician here in Farmers Branch. He was one of the earliest physicians. This house is really unique, one, it being a stone structure, but it's also the oldest stone structure on its original foundation in Dallas County. We're very lucky to have it here at the Historical Park. It's the cornerstone of how the park was incorporated and how it's flourished today. Since the Gilbert house was built in 1856, after 162 years, you would expect the foundation to settle, and we started noticing cracks both in the limestone and in the mortar. So the idea was to have a structural engineer come out, do an assessment of the house, and we realized we needed to do an overhaul with the foundation stabilization.
Our company was founded in 1965. I bought it in 1999, and we specialize in historic restoration. Approximately 90% of our projects are historical in nature. They include 34 Texas courthouses, the state capitol in Austin, the San Jacinto Monument. And amazingly enough, the best thing about this project is I was born in Farmers Branch and our business is located in Farmers Branch. So we're pretty excited to get to do work close to home. The basic scope was foundation stabilization. The building was originally built without any type of spread footing or any type of concrete footing underneath. They simply dug a hole and started stacking stone. The mortars used back then were very weak by nature, and over a period of time and moisture getting into the foundation, it basically was deteriorating to the point where the cracks started appearing on the outside of the building. So the first order of the day was to excavate underneath the building in short sections, so you couldn't excavate the entire building or it'd obviously fall. So we did in 4-foot sections alternately like a checkerboard around the building, poured new concrete and steel foundations underneath it. And then once the first half was dry, we went to the dark side of the checkerboard, if you will, and we removed the other 4-foot sections, tied it all together with a grade beam. So now the building has a very firm foundation and won't experience any problems with settling in the future.
The Gilbert House is a registered Texas landmark, so under the Texas Historical Commission, there are specific guidelines that we have to follow when any structural improvements and work is being done.
In this case, because the house is at its original location, the Texas Historical Commission felt that there were likely going to be either artifacts or architectural features preserved here.
The archaeologists have come in and done both a ground survey as well as sifting any of the dirt to see what items that they may have uncovered.
So archaeology is the science of understanding past human conditions based on the artifacts and cultural features, cultural materials that they left behind. For instance, here at the Gilbert House, we're trying to understand in a little bit more detail the way a family, a member of the Peters Colony, may have existed on the Texas frontier in the mid-19th century.
One thing that's been very interesting along with the archaeological dig, the structure of this house, it's called a dog trot, meaning there are 2 rooms on each side of the structure with a central hallway that could be opened up with the doors to create air circulation, in the summertime. And that's where we believe that Dr. Gilbert both saw his patients and they also took in local boarders, travelers. They stayed here in the house. And that's primarily where most of the objects have been uncovered.
The vast majority of the artifacts we recovered during these excavations pertain to the domestic use of the house. A lot of architectural items related to the house and its construction, and also use of the house by the Gilbert family and others. Things such as their daily cookware and servingware, some household decorations, personal items such as children's toys and personal adornments. We did recover a rather fancy hat pin that we're proud of, and I think will make a nice addition to the collection here. And we've certainly seen the vestiges of later use of the house during the 1930s, the mid-20th century, and even some traces of its use as a recreational park today. Many of these artifacts, particularly those recovered from the interior of the structure within that dog trot breezeway, were remarkably well preserved. So we did find some examples of cloth, beadwork and wooden artifacts that under normal circumstances you would not see in an archaeological context in north central Texas. Typically out in the elements, those items simply would not preserve for the century and a half that this house has existed here. So because of that sort of microenvironment within the house, some of those very fragile artifacts were preserved.
This has been a really exciting project for us, not just to be able to stabilize the house and the foundation for future generations to come out and see and visit, with it being the oldest structure here in Dallas County, but also it's given us a great glimpse into everyday life from the 1850s on, and specifically the Gilbert family.
It kind of informs us a bit as to what types of activities these folks were engaged in. It tells us a little bit about how they lived on the Texas frontier.
As the Gilbert House project wraps up, we're very excited about it, and that it will be here for another 162, another 262 or 362 years.